Hi, I'm Dave Eddy, and we are here in the Eddy household in Battle Creek, Michigan. And we have the distinct honor today of interviewing Jim Hazel, who is an icon in the Battle Creek community, very well known throughout this area and around the state, as a matter of fact. James R.C. Hazel Jr., correct. I think it is, right, Jim?
You are correct.
All right, that's quite a moniker.
Named after my father. And my grandmother had a general store in Sturgis, Kentucky, where I was born, and her favorite drink was RC Cola. So the middle initials, being a Southern boy, is...
That's amazing.
It's amazing. People don't know that.
Well, you're better known around here as Jim, of course. Correct. Everybody knows you as Jim Hazel. Right. You were born in Kentucky, yes, but somehow or other you ended up in Battle Creek.
Well, back in the 40s, jobs were pretty scarce in Kentucky. My dad was a coal miner before that and got malaria, and so that was not a possibility anymore. So he worked in the local newspaper there as a print setter, back when you pounded the lead in and set that. Mm-hmm. But he heard about the jobs up in northern United States, and so he came to Battle Creek, Michigan, where his brother, Uncle Bill, was at, and came up here. And then my mom and I came up on a bus later on to join him, and I've been here ever since. The
rest is history, as they say. Well, we're certainly the better for it up here because you've been very, very active, Jim, in the community. You attended local schools then?
Yeah, and this is another thing a lot of people don't know. I didn't go to school for the first year because I was so shy. They would never know that today. So I was a year behind all my classmates. Started out a little Mammy school on Wabaskin Road. Then we went into Wilson School, and my dad bought the business on Golden Avenue and Beetle Lake Road, so we moved in behind the station there, and I went across the street to Newman School. Then all the little schools there were all joined together, and I went to Harper Creek Junior High. Wanted to go high school, but the high school wasn't done yet, so we had our choice, and I picked Battle Creek Central because of the education.
So you mentioned that your father had a station. What kind of a station?
Well, he started out with a little one bay and then made it into two bay marathon station on the corner of Golden Avenue and Beetle Lake Road.
Okay.
Very small stations back at that time.
Sure.
And so that's where he started his business, and all of us worked in there.
And you started, I think, around what, 12 years of age or something?
11 years old.
11 years old, you started working. What did you do?
I sold stuff in the store. We had like comic books, and back then we had eggs and milk before they were C-stores. And then I would help whatever they had. A customer would come in, I would go out and help pump gas and check the tires and the oil. And because back then everything was full service. Car came in and they got the same treatment day after day.
Yeah. So were your grandparents alive and in this area then?
No, they're from Sturgis, Kentucky. Mm-hmm. My grandpa and grandma had a general store down there in Sturgis, Kentucky, where they sold stuff to the local residents there. Mm-hmm. And then we came up here, and my dad worked a lot of different jobs for 11 years, and he'd worked for Bob McNally at Battle Creek Motor Parts. And he literally made Bob, who was a friend of ours, fire him so he could get the $39 to start the business. That was his severance pay.
And the business, really, in one form or another, has been sustained all this time.
Correct. Yeah. Robert Storage is down there now. As a matter of fact, their building is built over the old station. So it's still there. If you go in the front door, you can see what it was. But when I started the business out on 94 and Beetle Lake Road, my dad still worked there for 2 years, and then he came to work for us later on because he was very religious and wouldn't work on Sundays. And on the interstate, you had no choice. You had to sign a lease that you would be open 7 days a week.
Is that right? A lease with the oil company?
Correct. Yeah. And then when my father got ready to retire, and he retired at 60 because he had worked very hard all of his life. He had died 3 months later after 3 major brain operations for brain cancer. Mm. And then everybody else in our families died by about the age of 62.
Yeah. Your mother survived quite some time. Yes. I knew her quite well.
But she was in nursing home.
Yes.
And her last few years were very, very horrible.
Yeah. Jim, did you have any interesting ancestors? I mean, horse thieves, things like that?
Yeah. We had enough. And I had
revenuers.
I had no clue what my family was because I came up north at such a young age, and whenever Mom and Dad would have to go back south for a funeral or something, I'd have to stay around and run the station. But when I got sick and I wanted to know where I was from, I went back down and started researching our family. And lo and behold, we had a connection to Abraham Lincoln. My grandpa, or great-great-great-grandpa, Cable Hazel, owned a general store.
You said Cable Hazel?
Cable Hazel, he's in all the books. And Abraham Lincoln worked for him. Matter of fact, the grandpa is the one that gave him the books to go home and read by the fireplace.
You're kidding me.
So we do have that.
How interesting. How interesting. So, were they involved in the Masonic order at all?
No, my Uncle Bill was when he moved up here. He was part of the Bedford Lodge. My dad had never got involved with that because my dad pretty much was a worker all the time. I had a brother and 2 sisters and mom, so Dad had to pretty much stay at the grindstone to have money coming in to support us because we were getting school aged and stuff, and we all wanted to go to school, college.
So you were the first in line in your family then to become interested in the Masonic Lodge?
Right, except for Uncle Bill.
Yeah, except for Uncle
And
Bill.
then I had a lot of customers that were Masons, and interesting talking to them, but I didn't know how to go about becoming a Mason back then. And then somebody said, all you got to do is ask me, Jim. And so I did, and the process started.
Yeah.
And I've made great friends since then.
Oh, yes.
I wish that there was a way that people would know they don't have to take for so long if they want to be part of it. And I think sponsoring the Tiger baseball game now has helped make that a reality, because you'll have people that will say, hey, I want to be a Mason, or they know that at least to do that.
So do you have any other outstanding events in your growing up before we leave that particular aspect of your life?
And growing up, I was part of the Harper Creek schools, and I was president of student council when we named it Harper Creek, the Beavers, the Blue and the White, and all that. And I can tell you some other stories about that I'm glad didn't happen. And then I got a chance to go to Central High School, and then I got a chance to meet the love of my wife, my Donna Jean. She was my high school sweetheart, and we have now been married 52 years. It's hard to believe that she's that old.
Yeah, right. You're not, of course.
No.
But, well, as long as we're talking about family, let's delve into that a little bit. You have several children.
Right. I had daughter Julie and son Jim III. So my dad's got the 2 predecessors after him. But my daughter Julie was a very active young lady, very well liked, very hardworking, very well educated. But she died at the age of 29 after having my grandson. And that's how I got involved with the foundation work and stuff then, because I wanted to do something that was meaningful so people could remember who she was and what she stood for. I was in fundraising before that, but never the endowed type of stuff. And that really opened my eyes that we have a opportunity in this community to really make a difference. And you don't have to be a multimillionaire to do it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. So your involvement with the Battle Creek Community Foundation, I know, has been just outstanding.
Right.
And let's talk a little bit about that right now. I know you're very well known, Jim, in the community for your fundraising and organizing things of that nature.
Right.
Let's talk specifically about the Battle Creek Community Foundation because, as you know, that's very near and dear to my heart.
Right.
As well.
I was very prominent in getting you involved with that.
So
because
it's your fault, huh?
It's my fault, and I'm proud to say that it is my fault. It all goes back to when my daughter was dying. I really wanted to do something, and I didn't know, and then somebody sicked me on to Pete Christ, who was the head of the foundation at that time. And Pete says, well, we can do memorials if you'd like to do that. Well, we'd already done the funeral and all that. I wished I'd have known what I know now at that time, because it would even be larger, because it gives people an opportunity to do something positive. So we started setting up a fund, and we've kept that fund going, and we kept adding to it. And over all those years now, we have been able to give out many scholarships in her name. We've been able to do many things at her school in her name, and even at her college. Julie's name and her works are never forgotten, because that will go on long after I and my wife and my son and her daughter, her son are gone. There still will be a fund there doing good things in the community.
This money that's donated goes and is held by the Battle Creek Community Foundation,
Right.
and then you can give out scholarships from that.
Right.
And anybody can start one of those.
Yes, and I've been very helpful on starting it because we never did do fundraising when I was on the board. Then Russ Mawby came along, became chairman of the board. He said, I'd really like to start another committee to make people aware that we can do things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked that I be the chair of that committee. And so everything we did was brand new. And I started a program called the Ambassador Programs. I invited 7 of my friends that already had funds there to help me get this program out into the community. Well, that Ambassador Program now is up to close to 300 people. And we meet 3 or 4 times a year. We get more educated about how we can do this, how we can let our friends know, how we can let other people. And that fund has grown from, it was $37 million at that time. Now we're a little over $100 million. And it's just by letting people know that they can make a difference.
You have been involved in a lot of fundraising, and maybe
Right.
this would be a good time to talk about some of those right now. I know one that comes to mind immediately that you've been involved in of late is Binder Park Zoo.
Right, well, there's 3 different kinds of fundraising. There's fundraising for programs, there's fundraising for brick and mortar, and then there's fundraising for endowments. A lot of organizations have to have program fundraising constantly because you have to keep the heat on, you have to make sure that somebody's taking care of the phone bill, all the other things like that. So you're constantly raising money for program. I do a lot of those. That one that you're just talking about, we just had a very successful one for the Binder Park Zoo Thursday night called Starry Fafari. I'm a member of the Battle Creek Rotary Club, and we wanted to do something in honor of Greg Geis, who was a fellow Rotarian and is outgoing of the zoo. Well, we went out there, I think we were going to do that, but then we found out that they had some financial challenges that they needed help with. So, well, if we're doing this, why don't we raise a significant amount of money to help on some of the programs that you need help with? Well, we went from thinking about $15,000 to $35,000 to $100,000. Now I'm hoping that we're going to hit the $200,000 mark, and that money will go back into an institution in our community that benefits everybody in the region. And we brought in a big name like Jack Hanna to be the speaker. We held a nice dinner, and we held a lot of opportunities for people to be able to participate. I do that every year for Boy Scouts, and I call it the Friend of Scouting. And we have a fundraiser throughout the year to make sure we have programs that can continue on. We now have finally realized that the foundation, that we also need funding to keep the programs to go on. So we're there so all these other programs can do their money.
Right.
And we just started that this year.
Yeah.
And that's called Leadership Fund. And so those are very major. Now, I've done a lot of capital campaigns over the years. First ones were the scouting, because that's my true passion. I've been a scout leader for 60 years.
You were an Eagle Scout, too.
No, I was not. Everybody thinks I was. But because I have so many Eagle Scouts, and the reason why is because I wasn't and I could have been. I realized you need to have some support there to make that happen.
Yeah.
So all the programs that I work within, I make sure that those kids are encouraged. I make sure they have the opportunity. And then when they become an Eagle Scout, they really are strong representative of the program, because less than 1% of the boys make it to Eagle. Our program is much higher than that because we make sure those kids have the opportunity. So I'm real proud of all those kids that I call Eagle Scouts. Then we have the troop level that we have to raise money for. We have the council level, and we have the national. But I also, by serving on the council board and then the national board for a while, you always have to have brick and mortar projects. Like we built the very first Cub Camp in the nation out at T. Ben Johnson in Kalamazoo. And that's where the kids can come out for 2 or 3 days of camping instead of the week long like we do in the scouting program, to get them inspired to stay with it. Because kids love the outing. And that's the whole secret of scouting, is if you can have stuff on the outside to get them closer to the nature and the outdoors and stuff, they're going to stay with the program. And then we had an old piece of scout property that was turned back to the Kellogg Foundation called T. Ben Johnson. Well, they wanted to see that used again for some other opportunity. Well, the Weiss Center in Battle Creek had a piece of property that wasn't very good anymore, and this was going to make a pretty good fit for them. And so I was asked to serve on that committee, And we found out that we really didn't have the base of money or the people to make that be successful. So we started working with the Kalamazoo Y, and it took us 3 years to get trust between the two communities, and we formed a separate board from those two communities to start the Sherman Lake Y Camp. Well, to date, we have raised over $22 million to build that facility. We have quadrupled the size of the property, and the last count that I knew, we've put 117,000 kids through that program.
That is amazing.
And that's a regional asset for everybody. And in our own local Masonic order, we do charitable stuff in the community, but we weren't making the impact on it, so the lodge started a scholarship fund. And then every year, we get to be part of that local celebrations of where we have helped at least one child to help up with their education.
They have an assembly, actually, and they get together, the donors and the recipients
yes.
all get together, and they're able to meet one another and so on.
Right.
It's a great program.
It is a good program.
I'm glad that the local Lodge Number 12 was able to do that. I know that you're very active in several service clubs. Usually a person just kind of concentrates on one club, maybe?
Right. Well, I was with Harper Creek Optimists, and I still am. Been with them from almost since day one. My dad was one of the founding members of that organization. That's a very large blue-collar organization that does tons of stuff for kids. There is hardly a week goes by that we're not either raising money or doing something with the youth in our community or other community projects. So I've been involved with that from, like I said, for over 40 years. The reason that I wasn't able to continue with that was because I went on a Boy Scout board, and it was the same night that I met with the Optimists. So I would been asked for lots of times to be a member of the Rotary Club. I thought, well, this would be a good time, but I really don't know if I could commit the time. So I started going to the Rotary meetings, and I was selected to be on that board the first year I was there, and I've tried, and I can't get off that board. But I've been really involved with that because that's the club that brings all the leaders of the community together.
Right.
And so many things happen in the community because of that. But I'm still able to now go back to the Optimist meetings because I don't serve on the board anymore for the Boy Scouts. So I do make a commitment to both of those.
Yeah.
And they're two good clubs.
Yeah. Well, you've been awarded many honors by both of those clubs, plus
Right.
many others as well. The empty bowl is an interesting concept here in Battle Creek, and I know that you've been very much involved with the empty bowl project.
Well, that goes back to being involved with the food bank. Bob Randos, who's the CEO of that, has a very strong commitment to making sure nobody goes hungry. Well, this turned into a regional thing now, but they're constantly in need of funds, and a lot of the people that we feed are the young children. Well, I was asked to head up a committee to get people of influence to come together to make bowls because it's a cereal city. And then we would auction those bowls off, or they could buy them back if they didn't want people to see what they made. So we would raise the money for that, and that has grown into a annual project of where the art teachers in the community get together and to get together with, we call them dignitaries, to make a bowl to raise money, and we usually raise between $30,000 and $50,000 a year on that little project every year. And it gives the children a chance to work with people they've only heard about, and it gives the people that are in those positions to work with the young people, and it really works out well.
I don't think, Jim, there's any organization in this whole community that you haven't touched in some way or another.
I've been blessed.
Yeah.
I've been blessed.
And you're very good at that.
Yeah.
And regarding that, you were presented a George Award, which I might add is an award that was started by the Bob Miller of the Battle Creek Enquirer News at that time.
Yep.
To honor people who do things just as you do.
Right.
And you were a George winner some time back.
Right, and I've also had the opportunity to nominate, and I think there's 13 folks that I have nominated that received a George Award too.
Yeah.
And because it takes somebody to take the time and the effort to make that happen, because you can't get it unless somebody nominates you.
Yeah.
And I realized that when I received mine, I had many other people in the community that were as deserving of that, if not more than me, but nobody had ever nominated them.
Yeah. So that's what it takes. You also, a number of years ago, I think it was 1990, I was there that night, but you were named Mason of the Year by
Yes, I
Lodge
was.
number 12.
I've had some honors there. That was a nice honor. I've also was a recipient of the Dan Carter, I forgot the last name already, Boy Scout Award, because Boy Scouts were founded by him and the other folks, and he's a very
Powell, Baden
Powell, but I'm talking about the Carter.
The other one, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And I was honored to receive that award from the Masons too.
Well, you know, you might have been able to remember that, but it may have been destroyed in a fire, a very disastrous fire that occurred at your home a
In
number
my
of years
home,
ago.
and
that made a huge impact on you and the way you looked at things, too.
right, the historical stuff that I have collected, because I am very historical, write articles and put things together, and I lost stuff that can never be replaced in that fire, and so that's very, very sad, but you have to go on. The fire, though, woke my eyes up to something else that I did not realize. I've always been the giver, and I've always been glad I've been able to be the giver. Everybody wanted to do something for me, and I said, I don't really need it. We'll clean through what we can get and we'll salvage, and we'll go on, because I had insurance. But they still insist, that's okay, if you do, then we'll start a fund at the foundation, and if anybody else has a disaster, maybe we can use the income off from that. Well, I had to write 320 thank yous. I had checks as high as $10,000 come into that fund. Absolutely blew my mind away.
It's amazing.
That I didn't have any clue that people have been waiting to do something for me. And now we've been able to help other people when they have their challenges too. They just have to apply to the foundation for those funds.
Yeah. What goes around comes.
That's
comes
exactly
around,
right.
I guess it really does. Yeah, that's amazing. Well, let's get back to your Masonic for just a second, because you've been very active in that, and
Yep.
you became interested. You said, I think, because of your uncle.
Yeah, my uncle. I knew my Uncle Bill was a Mason. My wife's grandfather always had this huge Masonic thing in his tool business, and I went in there, and he was telling me that that was his brother, and he was involved in Iowa and stuff. Grandpa traveled all over the world and stuff, and then came back and was a tool maker. So he'd never joined the organization, but most of the people that worked underneath him at Clark's were all Masons. So he knew what the program was, and like I said, I was interested, but I didn't know how to go about it. And then when I finally found out, because I had a lot of customers that were Masons, and I was very impressed with what they did in this community.
And finally, you got your opportunity. How long ago was that, Jim? When
Oh
did you
gosh,
get
I don't know.
involved?
It's got to be close to 40 years, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah. Were you ever able to go through the chairs of the
No,
lodge?
I served as high as stewards. Never did get the memorization down to the way that I felt comfortable
Yeah.
of doing it.
A lot of
And
us
I
have
also
that.
had conflicts on some nights, and that was with the other things that I was doing. And when you do that, you have to really commit to learning that, and you also have to commit to that time.
Yeah. You before we started the interview, we were talking a little bit about some of the people involved locally in the Masonic order, and we talked about W.K. Kellogg, for
Yes.
example.
Yeah.
And I know that there is a plaque, or his on the wall down at the temple. There is his framed copy of his petition, I believe.
Right. WK, because I've worked with WK Foundation on many different projects involving youth. I saw that his Fez, his grandson's Eagle project, the bowl that he made his first thing of cereal in, were all on display and stuff down there. And so then when I started doing, helping when we did the history of the lodge, I was one of the guys that was asked to help research some of that, and also photography, a lot of the stuff. Found out that WK was a member of the club. He was a supporter of anything to do with the youth. So it was an honor to know that he was part of that group. But back in that era, if you wanted to make a difference in the community, that was about the only social organization that was a fraternity enough that you could bring enough people together where you don't have all the distractions that they have today's world. So those guys made a huge difference. They were the founders of many of the things that went on. We can thank them for doing that, and I think our Lodge 12 is just very proud that WK was a member of ours. Because if you come out to my business because of all the things that I've done with that organization stuff, you'll see WK's pictures on my walls. You'll see that petition on my wall. You'll see all those copies of everything that he did. And there's a saying, and as a matter of fact, they did a story about me of a saying that I have, which I don't use very much anymore, but you can't go to the well without remembering the well digger. And I got that from my father. And I always thought it was an Irish proverb, and then somebody else told me, no, it's a Chinese thing, but whatever it is, it's still the same thing. Thank goodness for the founders that we have what we have, and you can't continue on without going back and doing what they did to make it so other people can do what we've been able to do.
Absolutely.
And so I'm really proud to have had that saying and not really know the true impact of it until later on in life. But my dad used to say it all the time.
Interesting. You are involved in other ways. I know that you're a Shriner.
Yes.
And I know that through your efforts, the peanut sale,
oh, no, it's onion sales.
Onions. Okay, I'm thinking of another fundraiser.
Yeah.
The onion sale.
Yes.
And walnut sale.
Yeah, we sell nuts. We do newspaper
You got the wrong kind of nut.
When you come into my business, you know when it's onion sale because they back the semi up, and we unload Valdelia onions, and then we sell those out in the community for a nice donation. And so that's one of the ways that we help raise money to keep those hospitals going.
Yeah.
And those hospitals are critical because of the wonderful work they do for young people.
They certainly do. Jim, do you encourage people, younger folks, to become involved in Masonry or to ask you about Masonry?
I have been willing to share all the time, and a lot of people know that I am a Mason, so they're not afraid to ask. Mm-hmm. And if they want to come, I've even been on the investigation teams when we go out and talk to people that want to become a Mason. I've been able to do those kind of things, but I'm very proud that I am a Mason. And so I'm not afraid to share all the positive things that we can make a difference in.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any hobbies?
I have hobbies basically that are all gone by the wayside now. I did photography almost as an avocation. Uh-huh. I never went anywhere without at least one camera with me. I've been blessed to be able to do worldwide traveling, take good pictures there. I've been blessed to be with the Balloon Championship since its conception, been involved with the photography there, all the school activities. People always would see me in an event taking pictures. I would get that developed, and then I send those pictures to whoever I was taking pictures of. Otherwise, I would never be able to walk into my house. But they were so thankful that somebody took the time for a moment of theirs. And now I've come to the age where I will go to funerals and I will see pictures that I have taken of those folks hanging on
as part of their legacy.
Their legacy.
Yeah. And I know you've followed me around many times at various places, and I've got many photographs that you have taken. And you thankfully always usually put a date on it and a little note with it. So
many people receive, and that's kind of the fate of the fire, that all that stuff is gone. And you know, I miss it and I don't miss it. It is kind of hard anymore unless you're electronically photographing, because they can't even buy film anymore. No. You can't even find a developing place to do the pictures anymore.
It's changed, hasn't it?
Right. And so maybe it all happened at the right time. But I do know that I have been able to share a lot of good memories with people with the photos.
Oh, absolutely so, yeah. As far as travels, I know that you've been all over the world at various places.
Our business is over the years. Well, as a matter of fact, I started traveling as soon as I got my driver's license. I drove to Mackinac Island. 16 years old, I was there, and I stayed there for 3 days.
You'd probably heard all about it, but didn't know what it was all about.
Right, and so we got to see that. And then when we got a little older and a little bit more established in my business, many other perks of my business was you always won a trip or a cruise. Mm-hmm. And every year I'd win either 2 trips or 2 cruises or a combination. And so my wife and I have been blessed to go all over from South America. We've been to Africa. We've been to China. Now the China one I bought because I went with some local friends here. And that's back when they were still had Mao and stuff. People would literally come up and touch us because they hadn't gotten Americanized yet. And we got to walk the wall. We got to do all the other great things that you do. I've only had one place that I haven't been, and I wish I would have took advantage of it, and that was Australia. And then on my Boy Scout trips, I always go backpacking every year. I can't anymore, but we would do Philmont, we would do Land Between the Lakes, we'd do the Northern Boundary Ride. We've been everywhere backpacking. And we went to almost all the national jamborees, and my son even got to go to the World Jamboree.
That's amazing.
And then my daughter, she carried it on too. Matter of fact, her senior year of college was the University of Paris. And so she got to spend the senior year over there. And she was able to go back to the homestead of where my wife is from in Italy and make the connection back with the families and stuff. And we had one of our nephews just marry a young girl that was 1 year old at that time in her arms. And Tony Zanotti just married her. And they went back to Italy for the wedding, my family did.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's what a great story. Jim, do you ever have any mentors that you kind of looked up to?
If I hadn't had mentors, I would not be where I'm at. Louis Schmuck was my scoutmaster. I really put this strong belief in do a good turn every day. I was able to be a senior patrol leader 3 years because it was a boy-led troop, and I got elected for 3 years to be that. We also did all of our leadership meetings in his house, not knowing at that time what a connection he was going to have, because he was a big dog in the Masons. He was very involved with the local lodge here, and I would see all of his books and stuff in his library there, and I'd fumble through them a little bit at that time, but I had no clue until later on in life. He was a very inspiration to me and many other young men that have went on and shared that same leadership with other scout troops. Then when I got into high school, I wanted to go to college. I really didn't have the resources to do it because my wife and I got married very young. I applied for a scholarship with Mrs. Binda. She had just started a scholarship program because her husband Guido was giving out scholarships to every school system that they built buildings in.
He was an architect.
An architect that built at Harper Creek. I was very fortunate to receive that scholarship. And to this day, I still know I wouldn't have went without that. And because of that, we have given out scholarships every year. I even helped her start the Gold Key Scholarship, which is a full ride scholarship for 2 years at KCC plus $1,000 to wherever you want to go into a 4-year school. So she was a very big benefactor. And she's also a person that was very involved in giving and foundation work, because she was on the board, the Battle Creek Foundation, when they had the sense to say, instead of lifetime terms, we're going to make this into a termed board. And I know you and I would have never been on that board if they hadn't made that decision. And I think that's what's really made that foundation what it is today, that you give people 6 years of giving their effort and their time and their talent to be on there, and then you know somebody's going to come after you. So, but they were also smart. They got an Emeriti group where we get together at least once or twice a year, all the old board members with the new board members. So there's that continuation of leadership. And then later on in high school, I got to go back to high school, probably one of the most influential people in my life was my high school counselor, Jack Maudsley. Got to know Jack because I got into some trouble. And Jack was able to make sure.
You got into some trouble, Jim?
I got into
that's
it.
amazing.
Yeah. Discipline was a lot different back then. Kids would not get away with nothing, because back then you had to show a lot of respect or you were in trouble.
Yeah.
And I wish they could go back to that somehow. But Jack was very influential, and he still is to this day.
Yeah.
I still get notes from Jack. I still spend time with him and Norma. They have been such an influence on so many young people to make this a better community. I wouldn't have been involved as much as I am with the Kellogg Foundation without Jack being in that position, because he had worked with me on other projects, so he knew that I had the passion for working with young people, and he knew that I was going to do the best I could do.
Dr. Maudsley, of course, was the superintendent of Battle Creek Public Schools.
Correct.
And then after his retirement there, went to the Kellogg Foundation.
Right. And so he's been able to continue on that leadership through many years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So. Who are some of the other people, Jim, that might have influenced you in the community? Some of the movers and shakers.
Well, I had the opportunity to participate in a brand new program called the Leadership Academy. We met for 2 to 4 hours every Tuesday morning, I think it was, early in the morning, and we would have about 5 people speak to us each one of those sessions, and we did that for 11 weeks in a row. They asked for a critique, and I wrote a critique. I was so thankful that I got a chance to do it, because that opened the doors for me to do many other things. But I wasn't real satisfied with the opportunity I had, and so I wrote down, you know, what I thought they needed to do to change that to be more productive. Well, lo and behold, they called me in for a meeting, and they said, Jim, we like your criticism and your constructive also. I says, well, I'm willing to work with you if that will help you. Well, lo and behold, the next 20 years I was running that thing. So, but I also took the same thing. We learned from all of our students. That turned into a year-long program, a couple retreats a year, all kinds of good things. And I can, you know, basically count 500 friends that I've helped go through that program. And so it's really put me in a good connection with everything that's happening. And so that was a blessing, with some things I didn't like. And I'm kind of glad I didn't get the things I wanted, because I wouldn't have been able to help still be part of that.
You've had an amazing career. What do you consider your greatest accomplishment? Or accomplishments?
Well,
Probably.
I got a good family. You know, I am so sad that I lost my daughter. I've got a great grandson out of that. I've got a wife that still puts up with me after 50-some years. I got a business as I'm on my last legs, because I was saving up for my son. But my son decided after, he did not want to do the 7-day a week for 93 hours a week for the rest of his life.
Well, I can't imagine.
Yeah, well, so he's going back to school to finish up his law degree. Here's a kid, that, same as his sister, you know, he had the opportunity, but at that time he didn't see the need in it.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm so proud to say I've never seen anything less than an A from him.
Wow.
And so he's went back, he's paying for it himself. So he's found out, you know, if he wants to get educated, he has to take advantage of what they're offering him. And so I'm so proud to see that happening, and watching his daughter grow up. She's a middle school child now, and really have been happy to see all that happen.
Getting back to your business for just a moment, I know that I've referred to you as the owner of Exit 100 on I-94 at Vita Lake Road.
That's correct.
That business has morphed from when your father opened this little filling station up the road just a little bit into what it is now. It is morphed. It was an auto parts, a filling station, auto parts,
Right.
and now you're kind of a convenience store type.
Right. We have a U-Haul dealership there, which I've had for 50-plus years.
Very successful one too.
Very successful. It's a proud brag, and it's a sad brag. We're always ranked in the top 1, 2, or 3 in the state of Michigan. I've been in the top 100 out of 12,000 dealers in the nation more times than I can count, which means good. That's business is good, but most of that business is one-way business leaving.
Leaving rather than coming in.
And what's really sad to watch is because of the loss of jobs, we're losing so many young families with children. It's got to be killing the school systems. With that many people left. And I think I read the other day somewhere like 5,400 children have left Calhoun County in the last 10 years. That's a lot of schools.
Sure is.
And so I'm sad to see that part of it, but I'm glad to see that I've got an opportunity to serve those folks and take their last dollar before they leave Michigan.
Oh yeah, and you got the first dollar you ever made. I know that.
No, I don't.
No, I knew you gave it away a long time ago.
I am a truly believer in giving it away.
I know.
I truly am. I can't let a day go by without doing a good turn, and it's very seldom that it happens. But if it does happen, you'll see me at one of the burger places, driving down to underneath the bridge and handing out a bag of burgers to the folks that are homeless.
Yeah.
And I really don't like that, to get along that far in the day without happening. I try to make a difference because so many people have helped me.
Yeah. Well, you have made a huge difference
yeah.
in our
Right.
community, and you're to be commended for
Right.
that. So, is there anything else that you would like to talk about? I mean, we've covered a lot. There's so much more we could talk about, I'm sure.
Well, the thing that I like, because this is a Masonic one, is I was the young kid that came into the order when I was there. It was all old guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I've seen for the last quite a few years.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a blessing to see the young guys that are coming in now and bringing their friends, because there is some relevance to what we do. It might be a little challenging to a lot of them because there's so many other things to do.
Absolutely.
And it takes time to do the Masonic stuff. I still believe in the Masonic stuff heartily, but I can't give the time that I used to give, but I can still support the organization either through their fundraisers or their recognition or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad I am a Mason.
And you've been a Mason for a long time.
Yeah,
Have you gotten your life membership yet?
I don't have a clue. I really don't have a clue. I got to be somewhere around there, but I would still donate to them even if I did have it.
Yeah. And as far as your business is concerned,
61 years.
61 years.
And that will probably be sold before next August. I've got a buyer for it today, but I really don't want to go until I get the right buyer and really the right price. So, yeah,
sure.
and so it's a very good corner. I think I'm the last original business on Interstate 94 between Detroit and Chicago that still owns the property.
Oh my.
I've seen
That's quite a distinction.
so many changes over the
That
years.
is quite a distinction.
Still live in we're still working in the Harper Creek School District, so I get a chance to work with all those kids. I still do the scout work, and I'm so proud of the young guys that are coming through that program now, and so proud to be involved with a troop that's so progressive and so dynamic. The service clubs that I'm involved with are two very, very busy ones. They make a difference. You're not just there to eat and burp. You're there to make a difference in the community. And so I kind of pick and choose what I do now, because health has really, screwed me up. I can't hardly walk anymore, and so
You certainly get around.
I get around.
For being handicapped in that way,
Right.
anyway. Yeah. So what is going to happen? What is Jim Hazel going to do after he sells his business? I mean, it appears to me you've done almost everything now.
There's a tombstone waiting out at the cemetery with my name on it. And it's a dash between when I was born and when I died.
Well,
and I hope that dash is full and made a difference.
That dash has certainly become full.
Right,
Jim.
right, yeah.
Well, if there's nothing else you would like to add,
No.
I hope that I've brought out some of the things that you were interested in. And so
Well, I'm so glad you didn't bring out some things.
Well, I could have asked you why you're short one finger there.
Oh, no. I thought everybody was born that way. No, that's another blessing. That was a disaster, but after the operation and other things, I've learned how to compensate.
Handle dynamite now or
right,
something,
right?
right?
Yeah.
Jim, it's been a real pleasure. It's a pleasure for me to have known you over these years. You've
Yeah.
done many favors for me, including starting a fund at the Battle Creek Community Foundation in my name for the
Yes.
community.
And I had to get special dispensation to make that happen. But I had everybody vote yes, let's do it, and then surprise him on his retirement with the Dave.
Yeah.
And it was so nice to know the people that were willing to fund that, so we could start that right out the bat with your
that
name.
and many other things. I
Yeah.
appreciate it very much. And Jim, you're a great asset to the community, and you're a great asset to Masonry.
Thank you.
And we hope that you will continue to be active for many, many years.
Thank you.
Okay.
I
Thanks very
enjoyed
much.
doing this.
Good.
Thank
We'll
you.
do it again, man.
All right.
Okay. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.